I just want to welcome you. I appreciate you all so much. I think you're doing a great job, and I want you to share that with others because a lot of people are still struggling or want to make it better. And you all have just some really good stuff to share. So thank you so much, and I'm going to let you begin.
Thank you, Bernadette, for having us. Of course, we are Johnson County Schools, and with us today, I'm superintendent. I have Sandy Music, who is our instructional supervisor. She wears many hats. Her and Lisa Salyer have been the driving force of our entire process that we rolled out for our online or JC Click and Sort, which is our remote platform, and our traditional back to school models. And so Sandy's with us. Lisa Salyer also wears many hats right now. She's a digital learning coach is where she's at most of the time, but she does many other different things as well. And then Mike Whitaker, who is our district technology coordinator and resident genius. He is with us today too. And I tell you, and so all I do right now, I tell people these people are the heavy lifters. I'm just a pretty face. So I've got the hardest job of all of them. So, we do thank you for the opportunity to share what we're doing, and we're very proud of how we've started this school year. And we know that we would love to be back face to face, and we know that our kids need to be in school, and we know that our teachers need to have the kids in school. We want to make sure that we're safe. That's our number one priority. And so with that being said, we made the decision to begin September the 1st. That was a couple Tuesdays ago with Click and Soar remote. And we're actually completely remote, pre-K through grade 12. We're completely online, completely remote learning currently. But on October 12th, we want to do that for 6 weeks. And so on October 12th, we have two options, actually three options that we'll have our kids do. Option one is JC Brick and Mortar, which is a traditional in-person school where kids come daily and get the face-to-face instruction. Option two is JC Click and Soar, and it will just continue for those students who have chosen online or remote learning. They will just continue with JC Click and Soar. And option three is an option that we've had for a couple of years, and that is our Eagle Academy, and it's a virtual option. And we really have focused kids in the Eagle Academy who already were enrolled in Eagle Academy. They use a platform, Acellus, and they will continue that, and it's self-paced. We do have teachers assigned by content to those individual students just to track and to help out if needed. So those are three options that will continue. Talking about our framework rollout, a lot of things happened prior to this year that really helped us, we feel like, be ahead of the game. So briefly talk about a few of those. We be remiss if we didn't talk about KVEC and the impact that KVEC had on our district with the Race to the Top grant. There were huge jumps that we made with instructional technology. Some of the things that were included in that were with the Chromebook labs that we used. We actually had people write grants for Chromebook labs, classroom sets of those. Many grants were used by many of our staff to purchase technology to enhance classroom instruction. The many professional learning opportunities that you all provided that our people took part in. And then on top of that, we've been an NTI district since 2014, and we've had a lot of bumps over the years, but we've had experienced a lot of growth. And we really, based on that, felt very prepared last March to roll over into complete online learning when we were forced to do that. So, like I said, we felt like we feel very good about where we're at prior to coming to J.C. Clickensore. Now, we know that changes had to happen, but I think our teachers and our staff were prepared for those changes and had the good background to build upon. We also, before our framework rolled out, we in April, as soon as we heard about the ESSER money coming down from the federal state, we the tech team, which was Mike, Lisa, and Jeff at the time, who's since retired, made a decision to go ahead and try to get our hands on Chromebooks for K through 12 because we didn't know what was going to happen starting this school year. Prior to March, we had Chromebooks, had one-on-one devices for everyone in 4th through 12 and most of our 3rd graders as well. And so we made the decision at that time to spend a great deal of that ESSER money to make sure that we had devices for every student K through 12. And we ordered those in April, and they're out in our kids' hands now. And so every student in our district has their own school issue device. We're very pleased with that as well. And also before the framework rolled out, we conducted, I think 2 staff surveys and parent student community survey as well. And those really were vital in helping us make decisions for the development of our framework. And I'll say that the first survey we sent out, all of them related to comfort levels coming back to school and preferences to where your child would like to receive their education, and for our staff, if they felt safe to come back into school. And those surveys, I didn't know they changed from the first survey to the last survey. And a lot of that was due to our local numbers and jumping of our cases of coronavirus. But we took all of those into consideration when making our decision. And we also used to develop the framework, all the KDE guidance that came out. There's several documents that we looked through, combed through, and made decisions based upon that guidance. And then Miss Salyer also used the distance learning playbook. Is a really, really good resource that they used in helping development of the framework as well. And then of course we use KDE, KVEC, KEDC, and Power Up Blended Learning to help develop this playbook and framework. At that point, after we made that, and I say we, they did the bulk of it and run things by me, and we changed some things as we went along. Then we shared it with our administrators, our principals, and our district personnel, administrators, for any requests, changes, and input from all of those staff members. And then we also rolled it out to support staff, and finally we met with all of our teachers. We scheduled meetings either face-to-face or Google Meet. And we use Google Meet in all that we do because we are a Google district, and we expect our teachers to use Google Classroom and Google Meets. And so we figure that we need to model that same type of platform and the same usage because if we expect our people to do it, then we should be doing the same things. So we had that framework roll out, meetings with each school, all 5 of our elementaries, our middle school, and our high school, met with every educator in Johnson County to roll out, and Miss Salyer will get into the details of the framework a little bit later. But it was very effective, and we did have some who chose to participate virtually, and that was okay. That also helped us to work out some glitches with some of our online and our Google Meets and those things. We also switched this year to online registration within Infinite Campus. For years we've used paper pencil packets, and we knew that we needed to switch, but this just gave us a little bump with coronavirus. There were a lot of concerns with the transmission and a lot of unknowns, and so with the transmission of paper packets, we were just afraid to continue those, and I really didn't want to anyway. So we shifted to online registration. There was a whole lot of back end work by our DPP and by Mr. Whitaker to get that ready. But it ended up being very efficient, much more efficient than the paper packets, and it also allowed us to customize. And we actually on the online registration through Infinite Canvas, that's where our students selected and our parents selected for their students if we were going to be, if they want to choose face-to-face or remote click and sort instruction. And so that helped us to assign our teachers to face-to-face or online instruction. And we know we're all online right now, but that's helped us in planning going forward, actually. We also have had orientation for all of our parents and students, some virtually, some small groups. We know that it's so important and it's vital for our students to have relationships with their teachers. And we also know that our parents, especially of our new students and our transition students who switch from elementary school, either start elementary school as kindergartners or switch to middle school or move to the high school, there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of reservations about sending the kids there without them going through the building first. And so we set up virtual walkthroughs so that everyone could be familiar with the buildings. And we also had those small groups and had parents and students come in, of course, practicing appropriate social distancing and all the appropriate things to do to keep everyone safe. Then start of school on September the 1st, we had the opening day. And that was actually on August 31st. I'm sorry. We had an opening day ceremony with all of our staff. We do that. That's a tradition that we do in Johnson County. We felt, though, that it would be safer for everyone to watch from their own school. So we set up a Google Meet, just like we did with the framework rollout. And we had guests, had a student who DJ'd the entire opening day ceremony. We had a singer. I gave a little opening day speech, and then we actually had a guest speaker, Thom Murray, who visited us virtually and was just phenomenal. And it ended up being one of the best opening days that I remember. And actually had several people comment that they preferred this type of setting for opening days rather than all coming to one location. So we don't know if we'll change that permanently or not, but it was very effective for this circumstance and for this year. We also focused a great deal on first days of school for students. As I said before, we know that the relationship with student and staff is vital. And we also know that a lot of times our staff, our teachers, our bus drivers, our cooks, all of our staff are the only bright light that some of our kids get. And so we had we wanted to focus on getting to know the kids and letting the kids get to know the teachers. And so the first week, there are a lot of get to know you activities that were planned. And I had several comments on that, actually, that especially from our upper grade students and staff, that they felt like that they really had the opportunity to know the kids better, quicker than if they were coming face to face. It felt like that our students using with some of the opening day activities and videos that they completed were maybe more transparent because they were by themselves and they made the videos, and they were in their homes and they made a video. So it was really pretty powerful for our staff getting to see students in their home environment. And so there's a lot of positives that we've already seen by starting remotely. We've also some other things we've developed and adopted some policy concerning emergency leave for our staff and also for our students who may have more difficulties working online. So we just want to make sure that we touch everything and do everything possible to make sure all of our kids are involved. We've had to address some funding and resource needs. Luckily, we've had quite a bit of support from state and federal government to get the resources that we need, and we'll talk more in detail on that a little bit later. And then, so currently, we're moving into phase of teaching and figuring out how to remove any obstacles. It's, in my opinion, our main goal at central office and district leadership is to remove barriers for our teachers and our staff, so they then in turn can remove obstacles and barriers for our students. And so that's where we are right now. And we're actually starting today with our first online virtual district PLC by grade level. And so we're going to be focusing a whole lot of what we need to improve district-wide moving forward. And including in that, we have a lot of individualized professional learning and professional development activities. And we're doing all of that to prepare for in-person. And our goal is to start October 12th, as I said, and that's where we're headed. That is a couple of weeks after the governor has recommended start, but I did that for several reasons. We just pushed it back to October 12th, and we feel good about that, and feel like we'll be in October 12th. We're very excited, and I look forward, and we hope that actually our face-to-face numbers are higher than originally planned for and anticipated. That will cause us to have to change our plans a little bit and adapt. Of course, we know that the latest action in the Healthy at School guidance is that no matter how far apart you are, except wear a mask, and so that may impact our numbers face-to-face some. But that will also allow us to have more students in our classroom safely while wearing masks. So we'll be flexible, and we know that this situation is fluid, and we're just adapting as it comes. Something else that we did too that I think has been very helpful. Off of our main web page, we actually developed another web page that's all things COVID. And within that web page, we have details of both of our plans, the JC Click and Soar and the brick and mortar. We actually had the link for online enrollment. You can see all the guidance documents that we have housed inside there, our district calendar, just a one-stop shop for this school year. And we will continue to update that as long as needed, and hopefully we can get back to our regular web page eventually. But this will continue for as long as necessary. There are videos. There's a YouTube video of me on there, I think, talking about back to school. And then here's the online registration video, show parents how to register an infant campus online. So it's really everything we needed to start the school year this year.
Our next piece, like Mr. Cochran already said, we developed our framework that we shared out. Lisa and I went to every school once we had talked it over with principals and assistant principals, and trained every teacher and every principal around what we called our framework for opening school this year. And of course, it was really around, at that time, I actually think we did maybe 3 prior to the governor announcing there would be no returning to school in person. And then we did 4 after that when we knew we were just going to go in person. But we developed a framework around basically regardless of which we were doing, whether we were back in traditional or whether students had chose remote, or if we were all remote. So we sort of built it around any of those options. We did use, as Mr. Cochran said, the Distance Learning Playbook by Hattie and Fisher, and came out at a timely time for us. And we felt like it was really a good resource. So we pulled a lot from it. We developed modules then based on what we felt like the framework needed to consist of to have our teachers ready to roll. And so the first module was around the workspace, just the workstation and taking care of themselves. Healthy teachers need a good work-life balance. And some of the things we noted as problems from March to May was really a little bit of a teacher burnout. Because they were working long hours. So they were instructing all day and then also answering questions and instructing at night. And so that's why we started with the first module being around developing that good workstation and also that good self-care of themselves so that they can be a better educator and just a well-rounded person. So that framework just talks about how to do that. We also tried to model what we're wanting teachers to do and use, and that's using the teacher clarity, learning intentions, and success criteria. So we started each of our modules with the learning intention we wanted, and then what a successful criteria would look like in order to accomplish that. And so you can see that we've done that with the workspace and the self-care. The second module was around classroom management. Again, very different, from your in-person traditional classroom management. Teachers who've taught sort of know the importance of the management and the procedures and the routines, but doing that online in 24 to 40 homes becomes a whole different thing. And so we set up a success criteria for making sure that those same good things, though, norms, routines, procedures for a positive learning environment, were shared with our students and parents. So teachers developed norms for Google Meets, and then also procedures for how to handle situations that might occur, or where to turn in assignments, and just same kinds of things you would do those first few days of school in a traditional setting. We just set it up in what would it look like for the first few days of a remote class. And so that became the second module. We also give them some resources. So around each of these modules, we would share out resources that we had found or that we had, and in some cases, Lisa and I even developed, so that teachers didn't have to create everything. So the Welcome to Our Classroom template was one that we developed. And again, it just had what we felt like most teachers needed to share out in the first few days of school with remote learning. And then teachers could take that template, make it their own for their own classroom, but ensuring that across the district, all of the important routines, norms, procedures, and those kinds of things were in there. We also provided like routines and checklists and those kinds of things. So all that around classroom management. The third module was around instruction. And of course, Mr. Cochran said, relationships are really important to getting students to learn. There's a quote going around that says, "We must Maslow before we bloom." And I love that, because it's not really either or, but it's both. You have to build good relationships with students and make sure that their needs are being cared for and that they know that you care about them, because otherwise they're not really going to learn too much from you if they don't think that you really care about them. So module 3, instruction, was really about giving them, again, just some criteria for having a really good classroom instruction, be it in person or remote. And so the same great things you would do in a regular classroom: activating prior knowledge, using your learning intentions and success criteria, and outlining, what the lesson or what a good lesson is going to look like. How are you going to do formative assessments? How are you going to do your universal assessments? What about small groups? And so we sort of address all of those things under this instruction module. And then again, we also provided resources for teachers around that, and included that in. Another thing we developed, and actually has made a district policy, is a process for students who are not participating. So one of the problems we found in that March to May timeline was we had students who weren't participating. Either they wouldn't show up for meets that teachers had, or they would not turn in assignments. And so there was a disconnect there. And so we did some things to remove the obstacles that were in the way. But then in addition to that, we put in a process so that everybody's on the same page again with knowing when you have a student who's not participating, what do I do next? And so we developed a process and policy around that. We also talked about how do we differentiate, in a remote learning situation. We know how to do that when we're in person, but how do we do that when we're not in person? So we included a training that we had from several years ago around differentiation, but then we also give teachers some ideas. So, you know, how to make Google Meets for small groups, how to possibly have some one-on-one where students may have to come in and do one-on-one with the teacher, or through a Google Meet. And so we just give them lots of different ways. We also included ways of differentiating content, for like a student choice board, or by doing interest inventories with students at the beginning of the year to make sure that they included those kinds of interest in their lesson planning and or in their small groups. So flip grids, again, we just give them lots of different resources to use there to differentiate. And we also included under instruction, of course, the special education and RTI pieces. So our special educators had specific criteria, and our RTI interventionists, as well as our regular classroom teachers who provide tier 1 and tier 2, can, you know, sort of have a guide to go with. And we also included under the instruction piece what principals and assistant principals can do to help. And we included a checklist. I think actually KVEC provided the checklist resource, and we attached that so that principals then can also make sure that instruction is working like it should. They're very different from principals too, because, you know, walkthroughs change. So, you know, now walkthroughs become, yeah, they can walk through their building and watch teachers teaching remotely in their classroom, but they can also join classrooms and do walkthroughs by actually joining the classrooms. And so we had to prepare some fixes for some things like that, and all that was addressed in the framework under instruction for principals. The fourth module was around equity. So, you know, we use the statement, you know, a lot of times, does all really mean all, you know, and so we have to make sure that education is equitable for students. And I love what's going on right now with the partnerships and the internet that the tech team and Mr. Cochran are working on, because that is one thing we know. 97% of our students do have access to internet. So in remote learning, they can meet with the teacher on a regular basis and have small groups and get to their assignments. But we have 4% that can't. So again, how do we make sure all means all, that we get those students who are in that 4% who don't have access to internet? So again, reducing the barriers for those students and the teachers to get that information to them. So we address equity through things like that, but we also made sure that our school psychologists and our counselors were addressing social emotional learning. Again, students have been out of school now, what, 7 months since in person. They've been in school, but remote. So, you know, we know that there's some social emotional learning issues. So we made sure that we address that. Continuing our growth mindset. So we had teachers in the first few days of school providing lessons around growth mindset. We have schools that are Leader in Me, you know, making sure that those great 7 habits are still in those beginning instruction. So we just made sure that all of those kinds of things took place in the equity module to just bring attention to make sure that all students really mean all students.
Hey, Ms. Music, if I could just interject out there, something
Yeah.
else for the equity piece. We also, our transportation department has been really, really good in working with our schools, and we actually they are transporting some of our kids who don't have internet to and from school, so they can have that internet access as well, which I think is a very important piece. It's a small group, but it's something that's happening that's very important to ensure those kids don't have internet access, or who are at home with caregivers that may not be able to help them with their instruction. They still get that face-to-face with our teachers. So I just want to throw that in there as well.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And then also in the equity piece, you have to mention the lunch program. So we provided, Mr. Cochran chime in on the number to make sure that we're right. How many lunches did we serve a week through the summer?
A little about 40,000 per week throughout the summer, and And we just received the waiver, statewide waiver last week to continue summer feeding. And so we've actually started our bus routes back. We transport, or deliver lunches, breakfast and lunch 3 days a week, two sets of meals every time we deliver, but we follow our bus routes. And so we make sure that we hit every student who is in Johnson County.
Absolutely. So again, just, not only instructional issues in terms of equity for students, but also some of the things like Mr. Cochran just said, lunches for students, and then also transportation, if they need transportation to those hotspots or to meet with their teachers. And then the next module was module 5, and we wrote that around communication. And so how are we going to communicate this to teachers? How are we going to communicate to students? How are we going to communicate to the general public, our community? And so module 5 was around communication. Again, we wrote it up with our success criteria and our learning intentions around that. We do use specific means of communication. So for example, Google Classroom is our one form of communication. That is what every teacher in the district uses in terms of providing lessons to students and one place for everything. We also use ThrillShare as a social media. That's how we spread our good gossip, is what we call it. And we constantly say, the great things that are happening in Johnson County. So our LMS is Google Classroom, and our social media is ThrillShare. We also use Remind as a way so that teachers can communicate with students, principals can communicate with teachers and parents. And again, that's one platform, so teachers don't have to use their own cell phone numbers and that kinds of things. Plus, it's a great record keeping of all of the communications. So we use that. We use Google Meets as our clear way to meet with students face-to-face when we can't be face-to-face, and provide lessons as close to in-person as you can get. We use Planbook for lesson planning across the district. So again, we just started making sure that we had real clear lines of communication that we're all using for different formats, be it telephone calls, how we teach, or social media. And then we shared out, again, trainings, and we still are doing trainings on some of these as school has already started. But we had an orientation template, again, that we developed so that could be shared with parents at orientations. Again, they did them in lots of different ways. Some did small groups, some by grade, some virtually, some not. But the orientation templates were used across the district, so there was consistency with some of that. We shared out, again, information on how to use the Remind, and then just how to get started with Planbook, and some of those we're still working on. We did use the Healthy at School guidance for documents that were provided through KDE, and we have got posters all through our buildings and our schools, and so again, that's been very consistent, and we keep updating those as they occur when we get the new updates. And then the last module was around digital resources. And so again, our tech team, Lisa and Mike and Jeff at the time, and then myself, we just tried to provide as many digital resources as we could. Anything around building a syllabus, welcome to the first week of school scripts, how to make a blended remote learning schedule, how to have a good balance of blended learning, not so just solely virtual or online, how to plan a unit, how to do writing, how to have digital notebooks. So we just put all of that again into the training, as well as this module framework rollout. And that way everyone had, you know, access to the same great information. And then in the last piece, we added a frequently asked questions. So as we went to every school, Mr. Cochran and Ms. Salyer and I, we had a way for teachers and principals to ask questions. And so they would provide these questions to us. One of the resources was a back channel. We used a back channel format. And they would ask questions. And then the three of us would get together and answer those questions as best we could. And sometimes those questions really led us to thinking, okay, wait a minute, we hadn't thought about that. So we ended up, you know, reaching out and trying to figure out the answers to that. So that was really the basis of the framework that we used and shared out, and we'll just continue to update as the year goes on.
Hello, Mike Whitaker, District Technology Coordinator, Johnson County Schools. And for the Chromebooks, and I'm going to start off with that without the proactiveness and future forward thinking of Superintendent Cochran and the leadership team and JC Tech team, we wouldn't be near as successful as we are right now. We had ordered 1,500 Chromebooks in April and got those in by March and had them separated here at the central office and ready to be handed out by students. We separated them, give the proper amount to the elementary schools, high school, middle schools, where they would then pass those out during orientation or scheduled meetings with the students. And without getting that order in so soon, we probably still wouldn't have Chromebooks. The vendor that we work with are currently 120,000 Chromebooks back ordered. A lot of local districts won't be receiving any until October to January. So a good portion of our success is due to getting these ordered so quickly. And also for those students we have that do not have internet access, it's around 100, 115. We have partnership with our local telco provider, Foothills, and we're able to offer a compliant internet service to those students who do not have internet. Those that are not in that area, we've also partnered with Appalachian Wireless to deliver hotspots to get everybody online. KDE has funded a last mile internet initiative, which has been able to make all of this possible with funding for that. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mike. And so as Mrs. Music has said before, the learning management system that we're utilizing in Johnson County is Google Classroom. And we've decided to use Google Classroom because we've been utilizing this for the numerous years now with the non-traditional instruction. And so most of our teachers and our students and our parents are well versed in Google Classroom. We also note that it's free, and so that of course helps to determine a way that we would go with our LMS. But G Suite offers so many tools. We try to keep everything that we can in G Suite, so it makes it seamless for all stakeholders. So again, just wanting to keep consistency now as early as our preschool all the way through 12th grade. And then again, talking about the G Suite, we utilize slides and docs, YouTube, Classroom, Meet, Jamboard, and we also are a Gmail district, and we were one of the first to switch over to Gmail. And we did this because it makes so much sense for students and our faculty. We use other products like polling, assessments, collaborations. Within the Google Meets, we're able to record our sessions, and we also, as you've seen in this presentation, we utilize digital portfolios and binders as well. So going back in, and Mrs. Music had talked about this just a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of streamline this and put it all together. It is just like a puzzle, but our learning management system again is Google Classroom. But one of the most helpful things I think that Johnson County School District has done in the past couple of years is to utilize Clever. And if you're not familiar with Clever, Clever is a way of students to have single sign-on. So for our preschool students all the way through 6th grade, they actually have a digital badge. And when they go to sign in, they would go to our Clever, Johnson County Clever page. They hold up their badge and instantly they're signed into all their programs, which coming from a kindergarten teacher, this absolutely has amazed me, because I was in classes the first week or two of school last year, and I saw 5-year-olds just navigating all their software platforms independently. So what this did is it freed up the teachers, it freed up the instructional assistants, and it also fostered independence in our students, which was absolutely what we must have. And then going on to the communication piece, again, Mrs. Music had mentioned Remind, and we are utilizing that district-wide this year. And this has also been an amazing process because it keeps documentation for our teachers. It also protects their privacy of their cell phone numbers. And I think from March, maybe just until May last year, we had over 330,000 reminds being sent out, and teachers were also utilizing Google Classroom as well. So you can see what a powerful tool this is. Student voice is very important to us, and the way we address student voice was we use a lot of Flipgrid, so students are able to do reflections. We also utilize Jamboard, and we value surveys, student, teacher, and parent surveys. Again, social media, we utilize ThrillShare and Apogee. We love to spread the good gossip, and the great thing about ThrillShare and Apogee is with the push of a button, we can send notices to our parents, our students. We can post to all of our schools' Facebook pages, all of the Twitter pages, and also what we call our live feed, which is on our web pages. And our virtual meetings are Google Meet. And then our personalized learning, we utilize ExactPath and iExcel. Our universal screeners, we have ExactPath and STAR. And then we have a lot of common resources. And actually today in our district PLC, we're going to revisit these resources just to make sure that everyone's comfortable using these programs. And we're going to check and make sure that they're able to sign on and aren't having any obstacles standing in their way. And you can see that we have a list, goes from STEM Scopes, Nearpod, we have ExactPath, of course we're utilizing G Suite, and Myon, which we're excited about, which will offer trade books. And we also have, which is Savvis Learning, which is formerly known as Pearson Learning. We have that available, so we're excited about that because that brings all of our textbooks into digital format. And to keep consistency, again, as we said, our LMS is Google Classroom. Our planning will be Planbook, and that's an online planning tool. We're excited about that. And then the communication piece, Remind, and ThrillShare and Apogee. We have our web pages where we use to communicate. We have Superintendent Cochran's YouTube channel. Don't forget to check that out and subscribe.
Shameless plug too.
We have parent and student orientations, and also I'm just going to share just real briefly our parent binder. So this is a digital binder that was sent out across our platforms, and this just kind of tells our parents, like gives them a guide and they can go to, and it has resources and it's tailored specifically to parents. And so they can go through and they can check out the checklist for our traditional brick and mortar, and they can also check out Click and Soar. We have dedicated workspace, but this was instead of geared toward teachers, this dedicated workspace was geared towards students. And so how parents can create a space that's comfortable for their students and gets them on task during school time. We have Clever, so if parents want to learn more about Clever, they can come here. We try to include video, and we also try to include maybe blogs or posts that they could read, whichever one that they would prefer. Google Classroom tutorials, again, just for parent perspective. Google Meet, our Remind, our social media. We also have personalized learning and student engagement tools that they would be using. And then we have to always remember to address the digital citizenship portion. So we have some ideas here for parents that they can use, but we also encourage 3 through 12 to take the digital driver's license. And then here we have frequently asked questions, and what you need, but we try to remind parents about this. This is a living, breathing document. So as things change, it is updated in this document as well. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add? Or Bernadette, do you have questions?
Yeah, I'd like to add, if I can, right quick. We talked about Ms. Salyer, Mr. Whitaker, and then the other Mr. Cochran who retired. But we also have added another piece to our tech team, and we stole him back from KBEC, and that's Mr. Andrew Castle. And he's bringing his experience, and he's focused mainly on the high school with instructional technology integration, but he's also been really helpful with distribution of Chromebooks, and he's jumping right in and helping a great deal as well. And so we certainly need to mention him, and thankful to have him back. But I said that to say this: we worked to try to fit all these pieces together, and we have a bunch of resources that all do align very well. But in the end, we can have all these great things, but we have to have the people to implement, and we feel like we do have the greatest people from our leadership, our district leadership, our school leadership, our teachers, all of our instructional support. Every staff member we have is vital to making sure that our kids are successful, and so we're thankful to have everyone, and we're thankful to have people like this team that's online here today who work countless hours to remove those barriers for our teachers and staff, so they can remove those barriers for our students.
I want to say thank you to you all. You have done a phenomenal job. It's amazing. You had things I had no idea that you had, and I've gotten so many good ideas, and I'm sure other districts can also. And I think you're exactly right. You all have really planned, you've thought it through. That was wonderful that you ordered your Chromebooks when you did, because I've heard a lot of districts say they do not have theirs. They're on back order. And it does start from the top and all the way down, and you all have a great team, and I'm glad to get to work with you. I enjoy it every time I get to. And I'm going to share this. It's going to be shared on our Holler site. We'll be sharing it with other districts at our IDPC meetings and the principal meetings, and you're just doing great work. I'm so proud of you.